In the story Christmas Eve, which was a TV movie that was done a number of years ago now, Loretta Young played the character of a grandmother who was her name was Amanda Kingsley. Anybody ever see Christmas Eve? She plays Amanda Kingsley, who is a wealthy widow, and her son Andrew is currently running Kingsley Enterprises in New York City. And they are kind of butting heads, she and her son Andrew, because he and his lawyers don't like how she hands out so much cash to homeless people and is helping them in the hospital and sending flowers and doing all these kinds of things. But the bigger part of the story is this. Andrew has 3 adult children who are estranged from him. There was misunderstanding, there's been hatred, and just awfulness between them for years, and they've been gone from the home, and no one knows where they are. Well, Amanda goes to her doctor. In fact, she collapses on the street one night when she's handing out cocoa. She collapses on the street, and she finds out from the doctor that she has an aneurysm and that she has an unknown future. She could pass away at any time. And so she decides that she is going to try to find these 3 grandchildren and ask them to come home for Christmas. So she gets a satchel full of cash, and she goes to Brooklyn, where her husband first started his business, and she finds this private investigator, and she goes in and she asks him if he will take this job, and he will go and try to find her 3 grandchildren that are missing. They're just gone. And he decides to take the job with this pile of cash. He says, I'd be a fool not to do it. So he has one clue to go on. And so he heads to Nashville, and sure enough, he finds the youngest son who's trying to break into country music. And he makes a connection with him and asks him to come home for Christmas. And the son says, no, my dad did this and my dad did that, and it's just too awful. I'm not coming home. But he does give him a clue, and so the private investigator goes out to LA and eventually finds the daughter who has been trying to break into acting, and she's teaching at a dance school, and he gives her the same message. Your grandma asked if I'd find you guys and asked if you'd come home for Christmas. And she says, no, I won't do that. There's just too much pain. There's too much, all that. I'm not going back. But he has one more clue to find the oldest son. Well, what happened was, years and years before, the oldest son was doing a war protest against his father's company because of their involvement with making weapons, I guess. And so that didn't go well. And then he escaped to Canada to escape the draft. This is back, I guess, around the Vietnam War time, or ish, yeah. And so this private investigator goes to Canada, and he eventually finds this guy, and he's married, he has a son, and the same question, your grandma would love you to come home for Christmas. And he says, absolutely not. My father's dead to me, it's not happening. Well, the private investigator comes back. Good news, I found everybody, but the bad news is they're not coming. Thank you so much, and thank you so much. And so she's convinced that they're going to come anyway. But she goes ahead with her normal Christmas Eve preparations. The tree is decorated, friends are gathering, and she invites the private investigator as well. And so he's there, and her butler's there, and her maid, and so on, and some friends are there. And she says, welcome, come on in, have a drink, and we have some hors d'oeuvres, and we're going to wait until the kids arrive, the grandkids arrive. And everybody in the room is just feeling so awkward and feeling so sorry for her. But the hours pass, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Are you guys okay? We're going to wait to eat until the grandkids arrive. And they're looking at each other and just wondering, she's going to be so disappointed. And 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, and all of a sudden, they're there. And they have this joyous reunion and hugs and kisses, and she meets the grandson's wife and her great-grandson for the first time, and the other grandson's girlfriend, and they're having this amazing reunion, and Andrew shows up at the door. He wants to talk to his mom. So they have a brief conversation, and his grandson walks over, and he looks up and he says, my mom tells me that you're supposed to be my grandfather. And he bends down and he says, Andrew, I'm not only supposed to be your grandfather, I am your grandfather. And he picks him up in his arms, and one by one, his children come to him and confess, and they're all forgiven and reconciled. And in the middle of this huge group hug, he says, welcome home. It's the most joyful scene I've ever observed in my life in a movie. How was it possible for the Kingsley family to feel so much joy in that moment? Well, all was right in their world after so many years. And they were filled with joy. And there's a sense in which that was a God moment, although they didn't necessarily mention that in the movie. But what was happening in this reconciliation and this forgiveness and all this was really a God moment to bring about such joy. And what was happening was they were each surrendering their own plans to participate in God's plan, really.